Today, Ahmed Gassama, congratulations, first of all, Ahmed, for this achievement. Today, Ahmed Gassama will be presenting my thesis entitled Brythonic Celts in Britain and France from Persecution to Separatism. So I'm going to show you how things will go. So Ahmed, you have 20 minutes to present the main findings of your work. And then my colleagues and I will ask you a number of questions. Okay, and it's down to you to answer us one by one, or we'll give just the pieces of all the answers together. It's down to you.
Okay, at the end, it's possible. At the end, yes.
At the end, okay, it's down to you. You're free to do that. So if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you so much. I would like to thank the jury for allowing me to be here. I would like to thank my supervisor. I would like to thank everyone present here. So my dissertation is titled Brythonic Celts in Britain and France, from Persecution to Separatism. So before we start with the introduction, it is very important for us to understand what is the Celtic nation. So the Celtic nation is constituted of two main categories, Brythonic Celts and Goidelic Celts. So Brythonic Celts are constituted of the Welsh in Wales, the Cornish in Cornwall, and the Britons in Brittany, which is located in France. Goidelic Celts are represented by the Irish in Ireland, the Scotch in Scotland, and the Manx in the Isle of Man. So there is one Celtic nation and different Celtic peoples. So this dissertation is going to focus on Brythonic Celts and precisely on the Welsh in Wales and on the Britons in Brittany. So according to the American historian John Thomas Couch, Brythonic Celts are the native population of Britain before the coming of Anglo-Saxon tribes. So the Anglo-Saxon tribes are Germanic tribes who came from Germany and established themselves in Britain, and over time they started to take over land, and as a result they pushed the Celtic people into Wales, Cornwall, and Britain, which is located in France. So in the literature review, the Britons and the Welsh are studied as a minority within a multicultural society. So they are studied in the same way as we study the British Pakistanis or Arab French. They are also studied in a regional context, especially when the issue of devolution and the English and French umbrella is highlighted. However, the observation of the Celts as a stateless nation is not well promoted in the literature. Perhaps the best attempts at studying the Celts as a stateless nation was with Michael Hatcher, who maintains that nationalism in the Celtic periphery emerged as a reaction to the failure of regional development. So this perspective is based on a Marxist view, which only focuses on the economic side. However, it neglects totally the cultural side and the political side. So this study revolves around the concept of hegemony and counter-hegemony in Brittany and Wales. Therefore, Gramsci's theory of hegemony is the most relevant theory to the objective of the study, since it focuses on the economic side, on the political side, and on the cultural side. So this study adopts a conceptual approach to reach a deep understanding of the rise of nationalism and separatism in Brittany and Wales, alongside the historical causes behind them. So the outline of the dissertation is going to be as following. First of all, we are going to deal with Brythonic Celts under English and French governance. Question mark, are they an oppressive people? In order for us to answer this question, we have to go back to history. We have to go back not only to modern history, but we have to dig deeper. We have to go back to the Middle Ages in order for us to know, to uncover the deep cause and roots of the enmity between the Celtic periphery and the center. Second of all, we are going to tackle nationalism as a war of position from 1939 to 1922. And last but not least, separatism as a war of maneuver. Before proceeding, it is of extreme importance to ask the question, what is war of position and what is war of maneuver? In order for us to ask the question, we have to go back to the Gramscian perspective. So war of position is the indirect war. It is the indirect revolution which is made by intellectual and the cultural elite, which try to spread the nationalist perspective through different means, for example, cinema, literature, history, etc. In other words, it is to solidify the nationalist ideology among the masses. However, war of maneuver is, of course, made within the political arena, represented obviously in separatist demands. So, first part, Brythonic Celts and the English and French governments, are they an oppressive people? So Antonio Gramsci demonstrates that any hegemonic state abolishes certain autonomies from its citizens, and that is why the French abolished the federal-like system which was held during the French monarchy, and they imposed the French laws since the ascendance of Napoleon Bonaparte. The English also have imposed their English laws on the Welsh people, and this political system still somehow continues till today. On the cultural side, different laws were passed to impose the French language and to prohibit the use of the Breton language in public spaces, and this also policy still continues till today. In Wales, the 536 Acts of Union legislated that any person who did not speak the English language did not have the right to enjoy any office. However, the Welsh language today is much healthier than the Breton one. On the economic side, both Brittany and Wales are less advanced in economic life than London and Paris. Many migrated to either find better economic opportunities or to enjoy the ability to practice their cultures. It is also important to examine Breton and Welsh representations. So the Breton are diminished and otherized in French literature, for example. They are depicted as wild humans living within forests disassociated from the realms of civilization. Victor Hugo perceives them as animals with moral habits. Balzac compares them to animals that graze the rich pastures of the valley, similar to the savages of America. A combination of these ideas is found in English literature, for example, such as Letters from Snowdon, where the English author Brythonic advocates the viewpoint that the Welsh were in the same civilizational state as American savages. We move to the second part, nationalism as a the second part of this. So nationalism as a war position. So strong nations proceed by downgrading weaker nations that are seen as inferior, backward, or achieve less in human development. That is, the conflict begins by downgrading the other and then imposing on him a cultural hegemonic power. Consequently, the nationalism of the subduer propagates the nationalism of the subdued, which comes into existence as an immune system. So here nationalism through historiography. So nationalism in Brittany and Wales grew through the promotion of a specific historical narration that criminalizes one group, which is actually the French and the English, and victimizing the other, which is actually the Celtic people. So here, for example, we have the French Republican historian Cornet, who upholds that the coupling of Brittany and Wales is a sign of love and friendship. However, the Breton historian Brythonic describes the French entry into Britain as a form of colonization. In Wales, there exists a debate regarding the interpretation of past events between nationalists and unionists. Linguistic nationalism in Brittany, for example, it is translated in the creation of private schools to teach the Breton language, and in Wales they tried to they took a whole different strategy, which is to make the Welsh language into the first language of education in public schools. Cultural nationalism. So we have different elements in cultural nationalism. For example, we have the cultural centers. For example, we have the Conseil culturel Britannique in Brittany, and we have Celtic Congress in Wales. Music, we have musicians from Brittany and Wales who try to use the Celtic instruments to emphasize on their Celtic identity. We have also festivals. For example, we have the Inter-Celtic Festival of Lorient, and we have the Eisteddfod Festival in Wales, which started since the 12th century and continues till today. Literature in both Wales and Brittany serve the agenda of the nationalist perspective. We have also commemorations. We have for example, we try to commemorate the past heroes of old. For example, we have the commemoration of Queen Anne and the last Prince of Wales, Owain Glyndwr. Nationalism and sports. So we all know that nationalism and that sports play an important part in inflaming the feelings of nationalism among people. For example, in Britain and Wales, we have the promotion of Celtic wrestling since the 80s. They say that we are a Celtic people, we have our own style of wrestling. However, the others, the French and the English, you are different people and you have your Greco-Roman style wrestling. There's also the creation of a rugby league specified only for Catholic peoples. The last part, separatism as a war of maneuver. So the direct struggle against state hegemony, according to the Gramscian thought, is referred to as war of maneuver, which is a counter-hegemonic process conducted against the state. So before the 1939, Britons were influenced by the Wilsonian principle of self-determination. However, the Welsh were steadfast to follow the footsteps of Irish militants to achieve home rule. Here we have two different concepts which require clarification. We have self-determination, home rule. They seem similar, but they are really different. So, for example, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, self-determination allows a particular people to declare total independence from the colonizer. However, home rule is defined as a self-government or limited autonomy in internal affairs by a dependent political unit. So here, self-determination is equated with separatism, and home rule is synonymous with autonomy. The Nazi question. So since the Second World War, after the Second World War was waged by the Nazi forces, we started to have separatist groups in Brittany which started to support the Nazis. So the separatists in Britain and Wales have always been condemned as pro-Nazis. However, this condemnation has really very strong grounds. So Wiesenperotte, for example, which is the Britain military unity, engaged in the war on the German side. The leader of Plaid Cymru, which is the nationalist party in Wales, so the leader of Plaid Cymru, Saunders Lewis, believed that Hitler would respect the independence of neutral nations. After the Second World War, we enter into another period, which is the period of moderation. So in France, in Brittany, for example, we have le Mouvement pour l'Organisation de la Bretagne, which only focuses on obtaining autonomy and did not focus on separatism. And in Wales, we have Welsh parties which were totally inactive. After the period of moderation, we move to the period of radicalism. So here, we started to have different radical groups who emerged to demand independence through the use of force or through violence. For example, in Britain, we have the Front de Libération de la Bretagne, and in Wales, we have the Free Wales Army. So all of these parties were linked to the IRA. However, they were unsuccessful in their quest for independence. So now, in the 21st century, we started to have a conflict. We have a conflict between autonomous parties and separatist parties. Now, the autonomous party, they say that we have to be a part, for example, of the French nation or the English nation. However, the separatists, they try to demand independence through peaceful means. For example, here we have Plaid Cymru in Wales and we have Resistance in Brittany. As a conclusion, we conclude that the Welsh emancipatory life cannot be compared with the political and cultural situation in Brittany in respect of autonomy and cultural freedoms. This demonstrates that the French are more rigid than the English concerning their policies with minorities and stateless nations. Britain and Welsh nationalisms are intrinsically paired to pan-Celticism. We also conclude that the current political situation indicates a schism among nationalists precisely between macro-nationalism and mini-nationalism. So macro-nationalism are the nationalists who see themselves as a part of the pan-Celtic nation, and mini-nationalism who see themselves only in the regional scope. Another important conclusion, France and Britain are suffering from serious divisions from within. Now this time it's not because of immigrants, but because of stateless nations. With this we come to the end of our presentation. I would like to thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Ahmed, for the insightful presentation. Now I will give the floor to your supervisor, Professor Hazallah, to give us a brief account on his supervision journey with you. And then I'll give the floor to the evaluator of your work, Dr. Marwa Manara. So the floor is yours, Dr. Professor Hazallah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Hamita. So, first of all, congratulations on your achievement.
Thank you so much.
Ahmed, so you've worked very hard on your topic, and today it's the opportunity to defend your research and to celebrate it. First of all, I'd like to say a few words on you, on the way we interacted during the supervision. In fact, Ahmed is highly dedicated to his research, and his research is not, it doesn't seem that it is just part of the program of the MA that he has to carry out. It's part of himself, so that's why Ahmed is speaking about his research with passion, and that's the way you did you presented the different presentations, even during your study at MA level, and I like that. So there is a sense of ownership of the text, of the idea. It's part of you, and you are passionate about it. Your study, you improved. I mean, if you compare the first day when you were struggling with your topic, I mean, how to deal with the different issues and how to manage to deal with Celtic nationalism in France and Brittany, then you managed to write a very good research. Apart from, of course, correcting your work, and I know what you know about the topic, of course, but I like the fact that you provided precise definitions of the key concepts that you are dealing with in your research and your presentation, which is clear, well-structured presentation. So Ahmed has a good grasp of the theoretical concepts that he is using in his topic, which is one of the strengths of your research. But of course, it's not the only one. Anybody who is writing an MA should have a good grasp of his theoretical concepts. Your work is well documented and well structured, and it shows that you are well read in the field. And it's not easy to read on different contexts, the French context and the context of the UK. And I like the introduction about the different types of Celts, or Celts is the same, you can use both pronunciations. So it's not easy to read on two different contexts, write on two different contexts, and to be able to have a good grasp of the different contexts. I do believe that you provided us with an in-depth understanding of both contexts, which is not easy, since you draw on an extensive number of sources. That shows that you are well read. As far as your narrative is concerned, I appreciate the fact that you manage at the end to write a coherent and critical narrative of Celtic nationalism. So that's it, but I have a question for you. So you know very well that you are speaking about Celtic nationalism. Today, there is no separatism, neither in France nor in Britain. And of course, we may say that the Celtic nationalism at this level is rather romantic one. It's cultural and romantic one. So do you think that context of Brexit might lead to real separatism when it comes to the UK? Or probably, what about other forms of Celtic nationalism in the UK itself? Do you think that one day the different Celts will join forces and claim nations, such as it is the case for the Kurds in Iraq, for example, or the different nationalist groups everywhere, including Spain, France, and the minorities that we don't deal with? What about, since you are speaking about nationalism and of course, the Celtic people, both in France and in the UK, they try to assert their own identities through different cultural activities, and of course there is a political movement which is leading this this form of nationalism. What about everyday life? Do you know that is there discrimination on the Celts since they are different, they look different? You know, you can contrast the Celts with Anglo-Saxons. Are they different? Are they perceived as being different? You are probably familiar with the idea that the Celts are called by some researchers as being an invisible minority. So what do you think about these issues? Okay, that's it, but I could ask you more questions later on. The floor is yours. Thank you, Dr. Rita.
Thank you, Professor Hadallah. I'll give the floor to Dr. Marwa, and then I will ask you a number of questions myself.
Good morning, everyone. So, Ahmed, first of all, I would like to congratulate you for on the completion of your MA thesis, or MA dissertation, rather. So, you have made a great job, actually. So, reading your dissertation was, such an interesting and enjoyable thing. So, let me say that maybe a great part of the merit goes to your supervisor, Professor Harzallah. And let me start, with the strong points regarding your dissertation. So, your dissertation titled Brythonic Celts in Britain and France from Persecution to Separatism, which runs, of course, 95 pages, including a list of abbreviations, a list of figures, an abstract, an acknowledgement, page, a table of contents, and 3 different chapters that are, I would say, evenly structured. So your dissertation is of good quality, your research work is diligent, and it hardly contains any mistakes, whether they are grammatical, syntactic, or of spelling. So I can assume that reading it, as I said, has been smooth. And the chapters are, are well organized and well structured and balanced, let's say, except for the conclusion, which I think that it is quite short, especially when we compare it to the introduction. Okay, so you have developed a detailed analysis of your thesis, and you made use of pertinent theoretical references. We'll talk later on about such references, yes. So as far as the grasp of the topic and the methods used, I think it is an original topic and challenging one. So I have some comments. Let me start with the form, maybe. So, for the footnotes, the font is not the same as in the main text. And for the bibliography, which I actually find rich and relevant, it shows that, you have a good grasp of your topic and you have succeeded in applying the various concepts in your analysis, etc. But you should have divided it into primary sources, secondary sources, and of course, website links, YouTube videos, etc., as just electronic, references. So it should be divided. So you have chosen the Chicago style, which is simple, but I think that it lacks. Everything is mixed up. Okay, so you did respect the chronological order, of course. Okay, so let me I have some questions. So the first is related to your references, okay? So you have applied Antonio Gramsci's theory of cultural hegemony, or hegemony as you want. So, of course, which is very good and relevant, to the topic, and I really appreciate. But what if you have introduced Michel Foucault, for example, and Edward Said, especially in the context of imperialism colonization, decolonization, the self and the other, and you talked a lot about otherization and otherness, etc. So, I mean, how could you refer to them? I mean, this was my first question. The second, could you please elaborate on the significance or the importance of Celtic nationalism in France today? When I say Celtic, of course, here I have to be precise. Here I'm talking about Brythonic nationalism, of course, especially if it is seen, I mean, in relation to the Corsican nationalism. The last question, the third and last. So, what is your contribution to the field of culture studies? Thank you so much. That's all.
Okay, so okay, so I'm gonna ask the question to respond to answer the question. So, in regard of Brexit, can Brexit cause separatism in, for example, in Wales? It is very possible, I think, because Wales is following in the leadership of Scotland, and Scotland right now, I mean, the first minister. Sturgeon is trying to make a referendum, and Wales, you know that Wales is always following in the leadership of Scotland, and anything that Scotland does, Wales do. You know, so it is possible that a referendum could be established in Wales and also in Scotland if it is established in Scotland. However, there is another question: Will the Celtic people join forces? I mean, I think that they are already joining forces today, because, for example, there is a very important organization in Ireland which is called the Celtic League, which is defending the rights and inflaming the sense of separatism in Britain regions in general. Also, they are not also joining forces with each other. I mean, all of the separatist movements, we can say, in Europe are joining hands together. For example, we have the Catalonian experience. In Catalonia, for example, they always support separatism in France and in England and in all of Europe. So, are they a discrimination of the Celts now in France? Obviously, to be objectively. According to objective ethics, I mean, there is some form of persecution to the Celts in France, specifically in Brittany. For example, we have they are always been depicted negatively in the media. They are not allowed to practice their Catholic faith. Churches are always being shut in their faces. They are also unable to run their economic matters by their own hands. And also the most important issue, I think, is the issue of language, because they are unable to learn their language or teach their language. They are only allowed to establish public schools to only teach 3 hours of the Britain language per week. And this is, I think, very discriminatory against the Celtic people in France. Okay, so Celtic nationalism in France, I think, is also a very important point, because I mean, Brittany can be called. I mean, it is somehow. I mean, becomes the heart of Celticism, especially during the Interceltic festival, which is established every year in Lorient, in France, in Brittany. So I think also. Corsican nationalism can also have a great effect on Brittany because of the domino effect. Anything that happens in Corsica or other parts or separatist movements, not only in France but let's say, all in Europe, can also affect the separatist movements in Brittany and anywhere in the world. So, what do you think that my contribution in Celtic studies? I think that I had a gut to fill. For example, I had to study the Celtic people from a different lens, instead of only focusing on only simply one lens, which is the economic side or the cultural side. I focused on different scope of research, the economic side, the cultural side, and the political side, and I did look at them as a stateless nation. I didn't look at them simply as a region or as minorities, because there is a difference between stateless nation and immigrants. There is a difference between, for example, the Britons and the Welsh and the immigrants, for example, from Pakistan or from the Arab world. It is also important to look at them as a region, but that would not really give us a panoramic perception of the Celtic people. We have to look on all different sides. We should have a holistic perception of them. So also, I think that we focus also on the issue of Celticism. For example, we focus, for example, in Irish studies or in Scottish studies or in Welsh studies, we do not give too much importance on the issue of pan-Celticism. For example, me, when I started studying, I didn't know, for example, that Brittany is a part of the Celtic nation. I didn't know that there is even the Isle of Man. I didn't know that I didn't even know that Wales is a part of the Celtic nation. So I think that this is one of the contributions that I did. I also, one of the contributions also is that I compared between two Celtic peoples which are under two Celtic different nations, which is actually France and Britain, and also a focus on micronationalism and macronationalism. For example, there are those who say that we are a part of the Celtic nation, and there are those who just define themselves as a part of simply on the regional lens. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And what about Michel Foucault and Said?
Okay, maybe I had to use them, but I really wanted to focus much more on the cultural hegemony, because it is very relevant to the study that I did. Yes.
Yes, but I think next time, maybe in future research works, yeah, you have to focus more on Michel Foucault, especially when we talk about power relations.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very important, the center and the periphery, etc. So,
okay.
And I would say it as well.
Okay, thank you for the comment. I will try to improve more on the future.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marwa. Ahmed, so I'm going to ask you just, two questions. The first one is in relation to the rationale behind choosing to work on the Celts or on the Celts, because reflecting on the current situation of the Celts, the Celts in Britain or in France, I mean, did you think about revisiting the concept of nationalism? Especially if you bear in mind that nowadays people feel proud to belong to a powerful nation. Take the case of the United States of America. So there are some people who feel proud to be Americans rather than belonging to other minorities. See, so nationalism takes another form, as you can see nowadays. So, I mean, my question is that to what extent do you think that working on a group of people and maybe depict them as victims counts? That's it.
So according to the Gramscian perspective, I tried to focus, as I said, on the Celtic people and how they try to victimize themselves through a historiographical lens. I think that one of the reasons why they try to identify themselves as Celts is that they try to establish a home for themselves, a home only for the Celts. And I think this is one of the opportunities for them to become independent from the French and the English, and this allows them to have power on their on their territories, and this could make them, you know, a whole nation for their own. Yes.
Thank you, Ahmed. So I could not, you know, move on without congratulating you on the good mastery of language. I mean, you've showed great mastery of English language, and your thesis, your MA thesis, is well structured, and you've visited so many concepts that that are in the beginning not clear to any reader, English reader, but by the end of the MA dissertation, you know, I've come to the conclusion that you've been passionate while working on this work, but I always look forward to finding students who keep an eye on the current situation of you know, minorities or any group of people, because you know, the world is changing, and even the concepts are taking different forms. Okay, this is just to bear in mind.
Yes.
Thank you.
May I ask more questions?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So, first of all, I will mention what you mentioned during the, when we were in the cafeteria. The chair of the panel has raised questions on the sources that you used. Of course, this is you used an extensive number of sources, and they are very interesting, and it shows that you are well read. There is no doubt about that, but Dr. Hamrita suggested that probably you could have, and she said you could have used, for example, carried out interviews with Celtic people. Did you try to do that actually?
Yes.
Yes, could you speak about that?
Yes,
Elaborate on this idea.
I made an interview with the leader of the Resistance, Gal Roblin, and however I tried to make another interview with the leader of Wales, but I unfortunately was unable. I tried to, Price is the leader of Wales. I tried to reach him, but unfortunately I wasn't able to make the contact with him.
It's not easy sometimes, I understand. So, now let's move to your perspective. Don't worry, I'll put pressure on you and your supervisors. Perspective. You are aware of the different schools of thought and the way we approach our studies topics. So, what kind of perspective are you using if you take into account these perspectives? You know, there are the three schools: the nationalist school, the revision school, and post-revision school of our studies. So, who are you? Are you a revisionist? Are you a nationalist? I know the answer, of course, and I guess everybody knows here after listening to you very carefully. All these students, they know about these perspectives. So, and why did you choose that perspective? If it is the case that you are a nationalist or a revisionist or post-revisionist. Yeah? Floor is yours.
So I'm going to answer straightforwardly.
Yes. That's what we need, yeah.
Of course, the nationalist perspective, and not only the nationalist perspective, but the pan-Celtic perspective, the pan-Celtic nationalist perspective. Simply because, I mean, how can I say? I mean, the pan-Celtic nationalists are trying to rebel against the imperial powers, and simply because they try to liberate themselves from the oppression and the persecution that have been inflicted by them through the centuries.
So why not revisionist? Why not? Why didn't you rely on the revisionist perspective in dealing with your topic?
Simply because the revisionist school tries to rationalize, we can say, a unity between the Celtic people and the English and the French. They try to reconcile, despite the existence of oppression and persecution till the current age.
What about the differences between Celtic nationalism in Wales and elsewhere? In Wales, we know that it could not be, the Welsh could not rely on themselves since they don't have natural resources. In Scotland, the Scottish nationalism, for example, the different forms, we are talking about the different forms of nationalism in the UK. In Scotland, they have oil, there are natural resources. That's why the nationalist movement in Scotland is strong, and the referendums were organized. So what about Wales? Isn't it just a romantic one, a cultural one, that wants to protect the national identity of the Celts, and it could never achieve separatism?
Well, in this case, I think yes, they are romantic, only if in the case if they see themselves in a regional context.
Mm-hmm.
However, if they see themselves as a pan-Celtic nation,
Yeah.
they could try to create a form of confederation between Ireland, Scotland, and the other Celtic region, and there they could help each other in regards of the economic matters.
Okay, so thank you, Ahmed, for your answers. Now we need some time to go to the deliberation. Thank you all.
اجتمعت لجنة ماجستير مناقشة الطالب أحمد قسامة بتاريخ 15 ديسمبر 2022 المتكونة من المشرف الأستاذ محمد صالح عزلة، الرئيس الدكتورة منى حمريتة، والمقرر الدكتورة مروة المناعي، وأسندت العدد 17 من 20، وذلك بملاحظة حسن جدا.
مبروك.